Hey guys, Mr. B here, and this one is not my typical math video. I get asked this question a lot, and in my classes I see this quite often, and it's sort of the how do you study math? And I can't tell you how many times I've heard students tell me that they don't study math. And I mean, I'm a high school teacher, so I mean, to be completely honest with you, a lot of students can kind of get away with that when they're in high school because, especially for junior high students, in the school that I teach at, they have, math pretty much every single day, sometimes twice a day. So there's lots of time in school to do questions, and you don't even realize that you're studying when you're in class. Now, when you get to university, that sort of catches up with you. So I tell my students that, in the stuff that we do in class. There's lots of things that are useful. Calculus students who are doing calculus is very useful for university if you're going to do engineering, chemistry, physics, all that kind of stuff. And the fundamentals of math is there. But I think the most important thing that you can actually learn from high school and take with you to university is how to study. And from my experience, I've taught a lot of bright students, um, and one class in particular I remember very, very vividly. Um, and that it's the students who learn how to study in high school who have the most success when they get to university. I remember this one class that I had, and very, very strong group of students, and there was one student in particular who was extremely bright, didn't have to do any homework, and would get close to 100 just about on every assessment. And there was another student in this class who worked like a dog, studied really, really hard, and didn't do terribly. I mean, 80s, but still, probably not where that student wanted to be. But when you got to university, that type of habit, that type of study skills, transferred over, and those 80s consistently stayed there. But for the student, of course, who didn't do any work outside of class, that was a wake-up call when you get to university, because there's no time. You're not doing practice questions when you're in university. So, in class, you're not, your high school teacher probably gives you pretty much a half hour, 15 minutes every day to do questions. Well, they should be. I do that with my students, but I'm sure not all, but they should. So I still get the question, how do you study math? And the first thing you should get, I should have a question. Well, I shouldn't actually have a question mark there, should I? No. Whoa. So the first thing that I think of when you have to study math is, it's so simple, but it's really, I mean, the best way to study math is to do questions. And I tell my students that the best prediction of the future is always the past. If you look to the past, the best prediction of the future always comes from the past. So, when I make up a test, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm trying to assess the outcomes of the course. So, I mean, I look back to the questions that we did throughout the unit and the outcomes of the course that I should have taught and you should have learned throughout the units. So, I mean, if you want to, predict, you want to try and predict what's going to be on your test or on your assessments. And I mean, it's as simple as going back to your notes. What did your teacher emphasize? What questions did you do as did they do as examples? What homework did they assign? So if you can do all those questions, if you can master those questions, then chances are you'll know 85 to 90% of what's going to be on that assessment. I mean, sure, there might be a question on there that you did and there's slight variation on it and it might mess you up, or you have all the concepts learned but it's a different type of question. That's possible, but not all the questions are going to be like that. So you have to go back and do all the questions that your teacher gave you and make sure you understand them. Another thing that I guess is I tell my students to do is retake assessments. So, what I mean by that is that, hopefully I spelled assessments right, is that, I mean, you've done assignments throughout the year, you've done midterm exams, unit tests, assignments, stuff like that. Do them again. I mean, a 90 in September does not represent a 90 in December when you're writing your midterm or your final exam, depending on how your course is broke up. Or for my students, a 90 in September doesn't represent a 90 in June when they're writing their exam, 10 months later. So you got to make sure that you might have got a 90, but you got to make sure that that material is still in your head and you still understand it completely. So retake assessments, and what I use for that, I used to really prop this up when I first started teaching, the blank paper, where I tell students to cover up answers with blank paper and do the question. If you get stuck, peek at the answer, and then do that again until you get it. Try another one just like it, and when you've mastered that type of question, move on to something else. Another thing I tell my students when you're studying is, I don't know if I can spell this, let's see. Embrace the suck. So what I mean by that is that if you're terrible at something, if you don't know how to factor, if you don't know how to solve equations or whatever it is, then the best way to improve your mark would be to practice that. So find out what you're not good at and practice it, practice it, and practice it. There's no point if you know how to factor to go home and do 20 factoring questions. Or if you know how to use the quadratic formula to use it 100 times. You have to do stuff that you're not good at. So you have to practice as much as possible. I guess last but not least is the thing I'll tell you is that when you get a test or an assignment or whatever, it really, they are meaningful. Like, I'm sure people writing SATs, MCATs, all those things those tests are high stakes. Public exams, those are high stakes exams. But most of the tests you write throughout the year, the reality is that I graduated high school in like 2001, so I'm like 13 years removed from high school, and I don't remember hardly anything about the grades that I got. I know I did okay, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's just a number on a piece of paper. So, you want to try and do your best and represent yourself well, but at the end of the day, it's just a number on a piece of paper. And whether you got a 95 in a math test in grade 10 on Unit 3, no one's going to remember that when you've graduated university or you're working or whatever it is, or you got 2 kids. No one's going to remember that. At the time, it felt awesome, or if you got a 50, it probably felt like crap. But, I think the most important thing to remember is just keep this in perspective. To some of us, math is everything. Math is my life. But if you're not going to, don't make math your life, I guess, at that early stage. I'm sure some of you guys will pursue math degrees, but keep it in perspective, and that's the best way. And that takes pressure off, and that will improve your results anyway. I think I'm going to remake this video and another time and do like a really in-depth. But I think overall, if you do questions, then there won't be any surprises. I remember when I was in high school and university, and I was doing English courses, and obviously I have a math and physics degree, so I'm not that I don't pretend to be terrible in English, but it's not my strongest suit. And I remember my buddy saying that, you can't study English. And I said, yes, you can. Like, you just do questions. And you make them up, right? You can make up questions and do them. It's the same thing in math. Like, you can predict what's going to be on the test. Do the questions. Do the test before you get there. And, if you could do that, then you'll have success. Alright, guys. Enjoy your studying and good luck in all your assessments. And, watch my YouTube videos is another thing you can do, and subscribe. See ya.